We've reached the saddest moment of any season if mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. The finale. Can you believe it's been 8 weeks already? As bittersweet as that is, I'm happy to say Season 5 goes out on a high note. Let's take a peek behind the curtain and see if we get any closer to uncovering the mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. Blind Frog Ranch. The endless shaft after deciding to focus efforts on the open pit mine in Season 5 Episode 7, Meteorite Mountain. Eric uses an advanced LiDAR drone to map out roughly 1 mile of terrain around the open pit. His data reveals 3 possible cave openings between the open pit and the keyhole cavern. The group decides that splitting up is the best option. Blind Frog Ranch. The endless shaft to first team is Charlie Boy and James. They head to a potential opening that's slightly west of the keyhole cavern. Their journey starts easy breezy, but quickly goes off the rails. The 2 men stumble upon evidence of a violent event that must have occurred there in the woods. Heads off on his own to a potential cave opening roughly 1/3 of a mile away from the keyhole cavern. Once at the potential opening, Eric finds a unique pattern following a mineralization line that could provide useful information. Chad and Josh head to the potential cave opening that's farthest away from the keyhole cavern, but is directly on top of the assumed line from the open pit mine to the keyhole cavern. They get lucky with this one, and it seems nearly endless. But it's what Chad and Josh find inside the cave that implicates 2 distinct groups of people once down there. Will this dictate Season 6 direction? You can catch the season final Wednesday, August 13 at 10 p.m. ET/PT on the Discovery Channel. Dawn broke with a cool hush over the Uinta Basin, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape of Blind Frog Ranch. A pale mist clung low to the scrub and ravines, whispering secrets only the land remembered. The air smelled of sagebrush and unearthed mystery. Dwayne Ollinger stood at the edge of the newly unearthed shaft, its mouth a black gash in the earth, surrounded by churned mud and broken rock. The dig team had been working non-stop for 72 hours, and the shaft, initially thought to be 40 feet, had defied expectations. Every layer removed only deepened the mystery. The walls, slick with moisture, revealed smooth-cut stone, oddly uniform for a mine abandoned for over a century. From above, it looked like nothing more than another sinkhole. But the drone footage from the previous episode had told a different story. A near-perfect vertical corridor, lined with unfamiliar etchings, symbols that resembled neither Spanish markings nor Ute pictographs. No one had been able to decipher them. As the winch began to lower a new sensor array, the ground shuddered slightly. Equipment rattled. Birds startled from a nearby juniper, scattering into the pink-tinged sky. It wasn't the first time the land had shifted under them this week. Inside the control tent, high-frequency audio from the shaft transmitted low pulses, some rhythmic, others scattered. It was unlike anything the geologist had picked up before. Last episode's cliffhanger had ended with a sudden temperature spike at the bottom of the borehole. Now, the spike was rising again, abnormally high for that depth. Chad, Dwayne's son, scanned the readouts from a makeshift command center of laptops, thermal monitors, and radios. The temperature readout turned orange, then red, then blinked out. Down in the shaft, the camera, tethered to 300 feet of military-grade cable, had gone dark, but not before transmitting one last frame. A blurred image, reviewed again and again in slow motion, jagged shadows, a faint amber glow, and the unmistakable outline of what looked like a metallic edge, unnaturally smooth, embedded in the shaft wall. The team debated whether to send a man down. Safety protocols said no. But the history of Blind Frog Ranch, its gold legends, underground rivers, and electromagnetic anomalies had always demanded risk. Earlier in the season, the team had explored the Western Tunnel system, discovering strange mineral deposits and a partially collapsed cavern with unnerving properties. Compass needles spun. Cameras malfunctioned. Now, with this new vertical shaft, unrecorded on any map, the stakes had changed again. This wasn't just about gold anymore. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, but the air remained oddly cold around the shaft. Animals that normally lingered, rabbits, deer, coyotes, were nowhere in sight. The usual noises of the land had gone silent. Even the wind, usually brisk by mid-morning, felt dampened, muffled. Another drone was deployed, this time with infrared and LiDAR sensors. It descended cautiously, pausing every 20 feet. At 260 feet, the infrared turned up a hollow space branching from the shaft wall, an air pocket with an angular structure. The LiDAR revealed straight lines. Nightfall brought a change in atmosphere. The sky clouded over. Lightning flashed to the west. The team stayed at the camp, restless. Inside the shaft, the drones remained frozen, stalled by magnetic interference. Radio contact with the lowest drone had been lost entirely. From deep within the shaft, something echoed up, repeating like a heartbeat. 4 beats. Pause. 4 beats again. Not seismic. Not mechanical. The ground temperature around the shaft rose 2 degrees in 5 minutes. The distance, coyotes howled, and stopped abruptly. A generator sputtered and died. Then another. Power across the staging area blinked out. Only battery-run devices continued. Cameras, wristbands, headlamps. A bioluminescent sheen traced the shaft's stone walls, a ripple of faint blue spirals spinning slowly, then fading. The cameras captured it. Barely, but the footage stuttered like old film. Static filled the sound feed. Someone turned on an analog recorder. The needle jumped. Below ground, in the unmapped chamber, a soft pulse continued. Dwayne reviewed the LiDAR printouts in silence. The chamber was symmetrical, carved like a hexagon, with an object at its center. Not metallic, at least not entirely. Possibly crystalline. It seemed suspended, as if untouched by gravity. Around it, 6 shapes. Blurred. Irregular. The team gathered before first light, preparing for a descent. The decision was made. No more remote sensors. It was time to see it directly. A climber named Rico, a specialist brought in from a private security firm, suited up. Helmet cam, 3 hours of oxygen, full tether, night vision gear. It showed the chamber, more clearly now. Walls covered in intersecting arcs, etched, not painted. The central object hovered silently. Behind it, a surface that reflected no light at all, like a shadow-given mass. The air was dry, but the land breathed heavy. At sunrise, Blind Frog Ranch lay cloaked in the kind of silence that carried weight. Thick, expectant, unnatural. Overhead, a pale sun rose through a veil of amber dust, bleeding gold into the Uinta Basin. The ground didn't tremble, but it felt tense, like it knew something the team didn't. Crews had been on edge since the previous episode's abrupt ending. The shaft, first assumed to be a shallow cavity, had unraveled into something far more elaborate. Now, over 400 feet deep and still dropping, its walls grew stranger with each layer removed. Chiseled stone gave way to smooth surfaces. Sediment patterns no longer followed geological logic. A cold fog rolled in before dawn, circling the dig site like a cautious animal. Motion sensors near the edge clicked on, though nothing moved. The temperature dipped without warning. Steam rose from the shaft like breath from a hidden throat. Inside the control trailer, Banks of screens blinked with static-laced footage. What the cameras had captured below the surface defied explanation. Geometric voids where there should have been rock, heat signatures with no clear source, and a glint of something buried. Metallic, polygonal, and pulsing faintly in time with the electromagnetic fluctuations first detected 2 episodes prior. Above ground, the team assembled with urgency. The latest LiDAR scans, processed overnight, revealed something stunning. Branching off from the main shaft, precisely 387 feet down, a narrow tunnel asked away at a 23-degree angle. Not random, not natural, perfectly engineered. More troubling were the shapes. Nested within the adjacent chamber, 6 vertical protrusions, equidistant, equal in size, like columns, or sarcophagi. The last drone they sent never returned. Now, at the break of day, a new attempt began. A fresh sensor rig, reinforced with anti-interference shielding, lowered slowly into the abyss. Above, rotating spotlights illuminated the shaft's edge, where strange etchings had begun to appear. Shallow, fluid designs, reminiscent of petroglyphs but older, more deliberate. Patterns that looked less like messages and more like maps, or warnings. Seismometers remained quiet, but the rig's signal warped. Colors inverted. A pulse of light rose from below, faint, greenish, expanding like a ripple in water. No equipment had ever lasted longer than 20 minutes past the 400-foot mark. Batteries drained. Signal interference spiked. Compass bearings became useless, but something about this morning felt different. Calmer, or perhaps calmer only on the surface. Tension rippled through the crew like a virus. No birds had returned to the nearby trees. Insects avoided the perimeter. Even the ranch dogs wouldn't approach the shaft. Duane stood at the edge, staring down. The light refracted strangely on the shaft walls, distorting depth. It was a vertical corridor into something far older than Spanish gold routes or outlaw tunnels, something pre-human.